Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Today is Friday, August 1st, 2025, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network, a special edition, 2 fantastic book interviews you do not want to miss. First up, the nation's justice correspondent, Elie Mystal, talks about his new book, Bad Law, 10 Popular Laws That Are Ruining America. It examines how our country's laws on immigration, abortion, and voting rights don't reflect the will of most Americans. He offers a perspective of how we'll be better off abolishing them and starting over. Also, on today's show, did you know the first paramedics in America were black? Yeah, I didn't know that either until I saw a scene from HBO's TV series The Pit, which includes references to the Freedom House Enterprises ambulance service, which was considered the first professional paramedic service in the United States. Folks, it's a fantastic book that breaks down this. Author Kevin Hazard wrote American Sirens. Trust me, you don't want to miss that as well. It is time to get our read on. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Folks, we got many laws in this country, but it doesn't mean that they can't be changed. Well, Elie Mystal, you've seen him many times in our show. He's the justice correspondent for The Nation. He has a new book called Bad Law, 10 Popular Laws That Are Ruining America. It's a book that you definitely want to check out. And Elie breaks down to me why these laws should be changed and saying, listen, most Americans don't even agree with these laws. And in his latest literary work, he lays out his thoughts on how Trump is blatantly disrespecting the law and so many other issues that we break down. Here's our conversation. All right, Elie, before we get into bad law, explain to people that we literally are facing a significant constitutional crisis because of the twice impeached, criminally convicted thug, con man in chief, Donald Trump.
Yeah, so the way that I've tried to get people to understand the problem here, right, is this. The president does something. Whatever president, whoever president, the president does something. Now, what's supposed to stop the president from doing those things, right? Well, we have a couple of options, right? We have laws that are passed by Congress. We have court orders that are issued by the judicial power, usually the Supreme Court. If the president can ignore both of those, right? If he doesn't have to follow the law as written down by Congress, and he doesn't have to follow a court order as issued by a federal court, then we don't have anything approaching a democratic self-government. We have a fascist dictatorship where the whims of the ruler affect what kind of a situation we live in, right? And that's exactly what Trump is doing now. One great way to understand it is with all of his illegal, unconstitutional funding freezes, right? He's cutting off money to various organizations, any organization that basically hires and admits Black people, their money is under threat, right? And that money that Trump is taking away was authorized by Congress, right? It wasn't authorized by the president. It was authorized by an act of Congress. He has been told by the Supreme Court and various lower courts to put them to give the money back, to turn the money back on. But he doesn't. He just keeps not paying people, right? So what do you call that, right? If the president can stop money from going to places that are that Congress has already authorized, that the court has already told him that he has to fund, but he can just not do it, that's called a constitutional crisis. That's a situation where the rule of law has broken down, and now we're at the whims of a warlord, which is what Trump thinks of him. It's just how Trump thinks of himself.
And for people who don't understand, there's an enforcement mechanism in the court, and it's called the Department of Justice.
Yeah, the Department of Justice doesn't really function anymore, right? Because the Department of Justice has been completely captured by the MAGA movement. Pam Bondi is not an independent United States Attorney General. She is a sycophantic United States Attorney General. She just does what Trump tells her to do. And so there's going to be no federal law enforcement forcing Trump to do any of the things that he doesn't want to do. And I keep talking about Trump, but I also want people to understand this isn't just about Trump. This is also about the co-president, Elon Musk, right? Because for all of the court orders that are aimed at restricting or restraining Trump's action, there are also a ton that are aimed at restricting or restraining Elon Musk's actions through Doge, right? But again, who's supposed to enforce that? Who's going to force Elon Musk to follow a court order? Well, that would have to be the executive branch, the President of the United States, the Department of Justice, and the FBI. And all of those organizations are so afraid of Musk that they won't say boo to him. So not only does Trump get to operate above the law because he simply ignores court orders against him, but Musk gets to operate above the law because Trump won't enforce any court orders against his daddy. And that's the vice grip that these people have our country in right now. This is without being hyperbolic, this is how democracies die. This is how you go from a Republican government based on democratic self-interest and universal suffrage to a dictatorship.
And what's laughable is that the person who made all of this possible is John Roberts, by the Supreme Court allowing Trump to win by saying, you have immunity. You can do whatever you want. He took that ruling and said, oh, if I get back in, I don't give a damn what anybody has to say because I'm the king.
The best thing that you can say about John Roberts, if you're trying to be completely generous to him, is that he is Dr. Frankenstein, right? In the Mary Shelley novel of the same name, that he created a monster. And now he's kind of running around being like, oh my God, what to do about the monster? It's killing my cousins. Like, that's the best way of thinking about Roberts. But I think that is far too generous. Dr. Frankenstein feels bad about the monster that he created. I don't think John Roberts feels bad. I don't think John Roberts is particularly afraid of the monster. I think John Roberts likes it. I think John Roberts likes the monster that he created is now going around and snuffing out the rights of people that John Roberts himself has never liked and never thought should have rights in the first place. So I think they're acting more in coordination than at opposition. There are processes. There's a way that Trump is doing it that I suspect John Roberts isn't thrilled about. but the outcome, the final actions that Trump is taking, the policies that he is implementing by fiat, I think these are policies that John Roberts generally agrees with, and that is why he created Trump in the first place.
And see, this is the thing that for me, I keep saying to any Democrat in the future. First off, if I'm running for president and I'm a Democrat, I'm going to say, the press is going to say, Governor so-and-so, Senator so-and-so, Congressman so-and-so, Congresswoman so-and-so, are you going to release your test scores, your transcripts? No. Are you going to release your health records? No. Are you going to are you going to put your money in the blind trust? Hell no. And then if they win, I'm going to use every inch of power of the presidency. See, Ellie, this is the thing that I believe happened. Democrats want to uphold the virtuous institution. Republicans are about power.
Republicans use power maximally whenever they get a chance, and Democrats don't. And Roland, that actually kind of brings me back into my book and to why I wrote it, right? Because when Republicans get into office, they come in with a plan, and that plan is to smash things. They want to smash people's rights. They want to smash people's abilities to resist them. They want to create a system where Republicans can never be uncreated, can never be kicked out of office again. They come in with a sledgehammer and they take it to government institutions, right? When Democrats come into office, they come into office with super glue and duct tape, and they try to reconstitute things that the Republicans have smashed before without their own sledgehammer, without their own plan or strategy to smash the things that the Republicans have created, the often evil, racist, misogynist things that Republicans have created. The Democrats don't come in with a sledgehammer. They come in with, again, a roll of duct tape, trying to protect institutions as opposed to smashing the evil institutions that Republicans erected, right? And one of the reasons why I wrote the book is that, as I've been saying, Roland, this is my attempt to start writing Project 2029, right? Republicans came in, Project 2025, with a plan. They are implementing that plan. It is terrible for our people, right? Well, what's the Democrats' plan to counteract that, right?
Right.
All you've got is like, we're not going to do what the Republicans do. We're not like that. That people don't come out to vote because they're like, oh, Orange Man is very bad. They already know the Orange Man is very bad. They've baked that into the system. Democrats need an actual plan for what they're going to do, and I argue what they're gonna smash if they ever get the opportunity to hold the sledgehammer again. And my book is about 10 things the Democrats could smash if they ever get power again in 2029.
So here's a perfect example. So Trump comes in, he overturns the Lyndon Baines Johnson executive order as it relates to segregation in federal jobs. Democrats, oh my God, the Dobbs decision, they overturned Roe v. Wade. That's because Democrats actually were, it's stare decisis. Oh no, it's already been decided. Republicans were saying, no. We get to court, we overturn this sucker. Democrats did not use the power of legislation to codify, to make it law. They just said, the courts, they're never going to touch that again. This right-wing court is like, oh, hell no. We're going to go back and tear down everything. Them accepting the 14th Amendment deal. They are literally saying we're going to exercise power. What you're laying out is, Democrats, if you get power again, damn it, use it.
Use it, right? Use it. And it's not, you were talking about the lack of legislative protections for abortion rights under previous Democratic administrations. But you and I have talked about all of the executive actions Biden could have taken even after the Dobbs decision to make sure that abortions were still available and safe and effective in the red states that were banning abortion, right? There was immense federal power that Biden could have used, could have brought to bear to make sure that you could still get an abortion in Texas, because Texas's laws, for instance, banning abortions don't apply to military bases, That's federal law. They don't apply to native reservations. That's federal law. But the Biden administration could have made abortions available on every military base in Texas, regardless of what Greg Abbott and Jonathan Mitchell would have said, and there would have been nothing that Texas could have done about it, because that's a vector of federal power that happens to exist in the state of Texas, right? But Democrats don't play that game. Democrats don't use the power maximally.
Actually,
look, I have.
Here's a line that I use, Ellie. Republicans go, what line? Ain't no line. Democrats see the line from 500 yards away, and they go, "Oh, we can't get near the line. You're 500 yards away. You're not even up close." And that's that to me. What is maddening? The purpose of winning is to exercise power.
It's something that Republicans have always understood. It's why the Republicans have been able to take over the Supreme Court. It's why the Republicans have been. I mean, if you look right now, there are people who voted for Trump, who don't really like what he's doing. I mean, nobody likes paying $7 for a dozen eggs, and nobody likes the tariffs, and nobody likes not being able to get their hands on the Switch 2. They don't like what Trump is doing, but they still give him credit for doing it. They still say that, well, he's trying to keep his promises. He said he was going to do this, and now he's using all of his power to do what he's promised to do, right? Democrats never get the benefit of that, because Democrats are never seen to be using their power as fully as they could. Democrats are I remember in the Biden administration, we had to have entire discussions. I had to write entire articles about the Senate parliamentarian and that functionary in terms of whether or not Biden could get his budget and his agenda passed. Has anybody said
Democrats went?
Has anybody talked about the Senate parliamentarian in the first 100 days?
Actually, they did. You know what they said? We're not going to follow him. Democrats actually said, well, the Senate parliamentarian has ruled, so therefore we can't do that. Republicans went, we're going to ignore him.
Yep.
And they did.
And they just kept on stepping, right? So, like, it's one of the reasons why Democrats are always fighting an asymmetrical war, right? Because Trump, and people need to understand this, the most popular part of Trump is the bigotry and the misogyny, right? That's very clear. I don't think that I have to tell your viewers and listeners that. I think most of the people who are watching your show know that, right? But his second most popular thing is his attack on institutions. People feel rightly that the institutions haven't worked for them, haven't helped them get ahead, have held them back.
And that actually appeals to Democrats.
That appeals to Democrats.
That's the Bernie Sanders crowd.
That appeals to Democrats. That appeals to Black folks. That appeals, like when we go into our communities, those are the kinds of things that we hear, that the institutions haven't worked thus far. Why should we be voting for the party that defends institutions? That's a really good argument that even I have trouble defeating when I'm out on the street, right? Because I also don't like institutions. And I hate how Democrats always seem to defend them. Trump's second most popular aspect of his racist, misogynist personality is the idea that he is an anti-institutionalist and he is going to smash the things that get in people's way. The Democrats' counterpoint can't be, no, we're going to protect the things that get in people's way. We're going to protect these esoteric, elitist, ossified institutions that haven't actually lived up to their form or function. That's always the Democrats' point, and that is a losing argument. And so when you bring up people like Bernie Sanders or AOC or Ayanna Pressley or Jasmine Crockett, one of the reasons why they're popular is because they are also anti-institutionalists. They are also unwilling to let traditions and conservatism with a small c, the idea that things in the past were better, they're not willing to fall for the okadoke. And they're willing to smash the institutions that get in the way of our progress just as much as Trump is. And that's one of the reasons why they're popular. That's one of the reasons why you have people who vote for AOC and Donald Trump in the same election, right? From 30,000 feet politics, that makes no sense. They're on two opposite sides of the spectrum. But when you think about their anti-institutional base, that is how you get AOC and Trump voters, right? And it's a problem the Democrats haven't faced directly. And it's one of the huge reasons why they are bleeding people of color, right? And I don't like to do the white media thing. I don't like to suggest that Trump is winning Black people or winning Latinos. He's still incredibly underwater. Trump, if we walked around unprotected in Harlem, he would get his ass kicked. You know, this is not a close thing. But for Republicans, when they don't need to win the African-American vote, they just need to not get blown off the screen, right? And so those small marginal numbers of going from like 11% of the Black vote to 15% of the Black vote, going from 15% of the Black vote to 17% of the Black vote, that can make huge differences, not just in the national election, but also in all these state and local elections around the country. And the reason why Democrats are bleeding Black voters and Latino voters and Arab voters and Asian voters is because of the institutionalism of the party versus the anti-institutionalism of Trump and the MAGA movement. And it's a problem that we have to address head on in 2026 and 2028 if we're going to have a chance to stop this guy.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Out 10 popular laws that are ruining America. How did you arrive? First of all, I take it your list is actually longer. So how did you arrive at these specific 10?
Yeah, Roland, look, scoping was obviously the hardest problem for the book. There are lots of laws. Many of them are dumb. I have not read them all. The way that I scoped, the way that I whittled it down to 10 is that I thought of two things. One, what are laws that we can just repeal, right? Not laws that we need to reform or massage or bring into the modern age. What can we just be rid of? A great example of this is the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, right? Now, I do not like the Anti-Drug Abuse Act. I do not like our drug laws. I think they are provably racist and have caused great damage to multiple communities, including ours. However, I'm not going to say that we should repeal all drug laws, right? We should probably still have some drug laws. I don't work for the Sackler family. I'm not trying to get people hooked on opioids. There should be some, minimum standard of drug laws in the country. They should be fair. They should be equal. They shouldn't be racist, whatever. But the Anti-Drug Abuse Act is an example of a law that needs to be reformed. The laws that I wrote about in the book, the 10 that I've picked, were laws that can be struck, just gotten rid of, that don't need to be reformed, that are so evil, so racist, so stupid, so misogynist, that we can just be rid of them, right? So that was the first focusing mechanism. And the second was, as I say in the title of the book, these are 10 popular laws that are ruining America. All of the laws that I focus on in the book enjoyed broad bipartisan support when they passed. Now, in a lot of cases, Democrats belatedly are just like, oh, that was a bad idea. We shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't have done the 1994 crime bill. Whoops, that was a huge mistake, right? But at the time, the 1994 crime bill, the Armed Career Criminals Act, these were laws that were spearheaded and championed by not just Republicans, but also Democrats. You don't get the 1994 crime bill if you don't have the Congressional Black Caucus getting it over the line. Those were critical CBC votes that got the 1994 crime bill passed, right? So the other scoping for the book were people wanted these laws when they were passed, and they're terrible. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you how in real time. I never ask people in the book to just take my word for it. I go and I pull out what the people who wrote or passed the law, what they said the law was intended to do. And in most cases, they're pretty honest about the racism or the misogyny or the stupidity that they wanted to do when they passed those laws. And again, in a lot of cases, Democrats have belatedly, come to Jesus and been like, oh, that was a terrible mistake, but the laws still exist. And again, that's the problem with the sledgehammer, right? We pass these terrible laws. We later realize the law was bad, but we don't, when we have the opportunity, take them away. We don't get rid of them. They just linger on so that Republicans, whenever they get an opportunity, can make those laws worse and worse and worse, building on the rotten foundation that these laws laid in the first place.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
When it comes to, so you talked about the drug laws, and obviously one of the ones that really resonates with us is voting rights.
Yeah, so my argument in the book is that every single voter registration law should be repealed, right? And that's different from voter eligibility requirements. I believe that we still need voter eligibility requirements, and I don't want people to at me. I'm not saying that dead people can vote. You're ineligible to vote if you're not alive. I think that's a fair standard. I'm not even saying that non-citizens can vote. I can make an argument that we should allow non-citizens to vote, but that's not the argument I make in the book. I'm like, all right, you want to say the citizenship is a requirement for voting rights? That's fine. Once you meet the eligibility requirements, why should you have to pre-register? Right? If I am eligible to vote, why can't I just show up and vote? Why do I have to register days, weeks, sometimes months in advance? Why do I have to go through a second hoop when I'm already eligible to vote? You see, voter registration requirements do not prevent ineligible voters from voting. Voter eligibility requirements prevents that.
And then, of course, when the Supreme Court ruled that, it was a case of Ohio, white guy sued. Oh, you haven't voted in the last 2 or 3 elections, so yeah, they got to remove you from the polls. Wait, what? Why the hell?
Voter purges happen because of voter registration requirements, not voter eligibility requirements, right? People who are eligible to vote, should be allowed to show up and vote for whoever they want, whenever there's an election, they are being prevented from voting because of these ridiculous registration requirements, right? We should get rid of them. And again, not only do you not have to take my word for it, this is not a solution that I am the only person that has come up with. Every other major democracy on this earth either has automatic registration, mandatory registration, or same-day registration. Every other democracy collapses the friction between being eligible to vote and being registered to vote. But they don't have that distinction. We are the only one that has this two-step process. First, be eligible, then prove registration, usually weeks or months in advance before you're actually allowed to vote. It's stupid, right? We have one state in this country that doesn't have voter registration requirements. North Dakota. There are a lot of voter fraud or voter voter fraud stories coming out of North Dakota. Yeah. Is North Dakota even a blue state? I mean, people always are attacking me saying like, oh, I'm just trying to make it easier for Democrats to win. Not necessarily. North Dakota is not a blue state, and it has no registration requirements. The reason why North Dakota has no registration requirements is because North Dakota has, relatively speaking, a large Native American population, and they want to make it easier for the Native people to vote. And the way to make it easier for Native people to vote is to not have a registration requirement. You have an eligibility requirement. You show up. Hey, I'm eligible to vote. Great. You vote. Boom. Simple. Democratic. That's all you need. And it's all North Dakota needs. It's all France needs. It's all Israel needs. It's all Chile needs. It's all the UK needs. It's all Australia needs. I can list the countries. We are alone in our stupidity over voter registration.
And again, when you have the mansions of the world who, they love and they praise John Lewis and Christian cinema, but then they prevent the John Lewis, voter law from actually being passed. And then Democrats privately agreed to a mansions deal. Oh, let's go forward with voter ID, things along those lines, undercutting all of the progressive legal arguments.
Right. The Democrats, again, when they come into office, they don't do the things necessary to expand voting rights. The best you can hope for Democrats is that they will try to prevent the further restriction of voting rights, but it's hard to get people to vote for we're stopping the further right?
Or even in blue states. I mean, look, you're there in New York State. New York State for a very long time had some of the worst voting laws in America. They were worse than a lot of red states.
Still does. In my chapter on voter registration, I focus on New York's laws, not Texas, not Florida, not one of these red states. New York still has some of the worst voting laws in the country. Why? Because having voter restrictions, having voter suppression helps the establishment, right? In New York.
So why? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
In New York, the way that it really works is that it makes it very hard to vote in New York if you are a renter, which, a city, when you think about New York City, a city with 8 million people, most of them renters.
A lot of renters.
What that does is that it decreases the power of New York City vis-a-vis the rest of the state. In fairness, the first massive voter registration law in the country was passed in New York in the 1870s. Why? Because New York was getting a lot of immigrants from Europe, was getting a lot of former freed slaves migrating up from the South, and they decided that they didn't want to have all those people who were going to be eligible to vote. They didn't want to have all those people able to vote, so they added a voter registration requirement. But critically, that voter registration requirement in New York State only applied to New York City. So if you lived in Brooklyn, you had to register to vote. But if you lived in Syracuse, if you lived in Albany, if you lived on Long Island, you didn't have to register to vote. Why? Because white folks with money lived in those places, whereas black people, immigrants, lived in the city, and those were the people they didn't want to allow to vote. New York State is not just one of the worst now, it's one of the worst historically when it comes to voting rights.
So why do voting rights advocates, why do they just keep skipping New York State? Like you don't see voting rights groups holding mass rallies in Albany or New York City or whatever the heck. What? Because it's blue?
Because it's blue. I mean, that's the only answer that I've got. Because it's blue. Because they think that they've got bigger fish to fry. And if you make it easier for people to register vote, and vote in states like North Carolina and states like Mississippi, obviously in states like Georgia, you can flip those states. You can turn those states from red to blue because, as we know, Texas, and the line about Texas is always, Texas is not a red state, it's a non-voting state. right? And if you got a lot of more people registered in Texas, you could flip Texas blue, and that would completely change the map of America. So I understand why they focus some of their efforts, more of their efforts, in places in the South as opposed to New York State. But I think it would show how nonpartisan the voting rights and voter registration movement is if they had as much smoke for New York as they have for places in the South. Because again, it doesn't have to be a partisan issue. Making sure that it's easy and frictionless for people to register to vote and then vote doesn't necessarily mean the Democrats win. It means that Americans win. It means that Americans get to participate in their government as was promised to us in our flawed Constitution. That's a bigger goal than any one party being in power in any one state. Of course, the Republicans understand that their best chance of winning is to have the fewest amount of people voting, right? And that's where we get to the voter ID laws. Now, I've made the argument, Roland, that if you gave me automatic registration, if you gave me mandatory registration, automatic registration, portable registration also being entirely critical, right? So like your registration should follow you when you move. You shouldn't have to re-register, right? Going back to New York, if I move from apartment 2B to apartment 1A in my own building, I got to re-register to vote. So a huge thing is voter registration portability is something that we need in this country. But if you gave me all of that, I would give you voter ID. If you want to give me a national voter ID that everybody can get, that is free. Free is critical because the 24th Amendment constitutionally prohibits a poll tax, and having an ID that you have to pay for becomes a form of poll tax, however small you might argue that it is. So if you give me a free, easily accessible national ID, and in exchange you give me national voter registration and portability and automatic registration, I make that trade every day. I make that trade every day. You know who doesn't? The Republicans. Because the Republicans aren't actually concerned with voter fraud. They don't actually want to stop voter fraud because voter fraud doesn't really exist. They want to stop people from voting. And my plan would make it easier for eligible citizens to vote, even if they had to get an ID to prove that they are eligible. And that's why Republicans will never go for it.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Have you had elected officials reach out to you and say, damn, Ellie, you're making a lot of sense. We're going to take up this cause?
Man, I don't punch that far above my weight. Look, you're on television, you're on radio, you do podcasts, all these different things. You've been laying these things out, and are they listening? I mean, are they literally, hey, Ellie, you know what? Walk me through this. Explain to me how we can do this. Or because that's what the right does. The right is they've always listened to their thinkers. A lot of the things that we see today came out of conservative think tanks from authors. When you actually look at Donald Trump's entire campaign and how he operates, he completely ripped off Pat Buchanan. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the conservative think tank mafia is responsible for many of the conservative and Republican ideas, whereas the Democrats do not use its far more august, I would argue, think tank mafia to inform their own policies and positions. And there are a couple of reasons for that, right? Number one, Democrats do not accept that they are the party that they are, right? The Democrats want to be at the establishment levels, they want to be the white working class party. They're still waiting for Reagan voters to come back home to the Democratic Party. Now, you and I know that that ain't never going to happen, but many Democratic officials, many people in power still believe that there is a unwashed mass of white working class people who are just about to vote for Democrats. And so in that, if you believe that, listening to a black guy like me doesn't seem to be in your best interest, because I'm not the guy that you want to send to, Huntington, West Virginia, to convince some coal miners to vote for the Democratic Party. Even though the ideas that I have would help coal miners in West Virginia, I'm not the messenger necessarily that you want to have. So that's one of the reasons why we don't listen to our think tank mafia. But I think so that's kind of like on the ground. But I think in a larger sense, it's not so much that people aren't listening to people like me. It's who's listening to people like me, right? The younger people in our party do, I've had conversations with some of the younger representatives and some of the younger legislators and some of the younger candidates. I do have those conversations, and I know for a fact that there are younger people, not just people of color, but primarily people of color, not just women, but primarily women, who are thinking along my lines and are interested in my ideas or ideas from people like me and like us, right? The problem is that those people are not in leadership establishment positions, right? And there's the old guard kind of won't get out of the way and let the new guard take the leadership roles and become the tip of the spear. There's still just a lot of old guard dead hand control over the party. Now, not every...
Which is why I believe what that new guard has to understand is they've got to organize and mobilize external pressure in order to bring that to bear. Right. The reality is, I don't care what it is, you cannot succeed solely with an inside game.
Yes.
When you are an agitator, when you're operating guerrilla warfare, when you are an insurgent, you cannot play by traditional rules. And I think they've got to have forces outside. And this is the hardest thing for people to understand. You got to have folk who are willing to unleash protesters, demonstrators against folk who you say, hey, I agree with you last week because this thing is so important. We need to win it all.
100%. You need an outside game. That's one of the reasons why I don't run for office. I think I'm more effective on the outside than I would ever be on the inside.
I'm way too. Actually, I think here's the problem. Actually, it's not a problem. I think folks like you and I, the problem is we are so honest that we might start with 20,000 votes and end up with 5.
Yeah.
because we're not tolerating people's bullshit. It's like when people, I remember somebody asked me and said, every place that I've worked in, they've asked me to run for office. I said, let me explain to y'all how this is going to go. A constituent is going to come up to me and they're going to say, I want you to do something about our schools. And my response then is going to be, do you have any children in the school? And they're going to say, yes, I do. I said, where do they go to school? Then they're going to say, said elementary school. And I'm going to say, oh, you remember the PTA? And they're going to say no. And then I'm going to say, how in the hell can you ask me to fix your schools when your sorry ass can't even join your own PTA? See, right there, that voter's gone. Because I just believe, Ellie, that the greatest fear in our society, and I don't mean black people, I mean everybody, people hate accountability.
I think I would definitely put that in the top 5. People do not like to be called, on their own bullshit. I also think that like to run for office, to be a politician, you have to believe that there is a certain institutional procedure to all of this stuff that can be massaged and bent to your will. And I don't necessarily believe that. That's why, again, I think I'm better on the outside pushing people to become more educated and to become more knowledgeable, and to, as I say in the book, don't vote harder, vote smarter. I think that I have a role to play there. I think if you put me in Congress, I'm weakened in some way, because Congress is about compromise. Congress is about working across the aisle and trying to work together where you can with the people who you can't, like, and that's never been my kind of mode of even thinking, much less my reality, right? So I don't think that I would be great in that kind of role, but there are people who are great in that kind of role. And the people who really want to do change right now tend to be the younger people. And I don't want to, I'm not being ageist. Hank Johnson is one of, I think the best congressmen that we have. And I've had the opportunity to talk to him quite a few times about some of my ideas. I think he's a great guy. So I don't want to be just ageist about this whole thing. But there is a sense that there is an old guard that is squelching the progress and the uprising from the younger parts of the Democratic Party. And it's something that we need to figure out now, right? Not 4 years from now, not 8 years from now, not just when these people finally die. We need to figure that out now. I do not know that we will have a free and fair midterm election in 2026. I do not know that we will have a free and fair presidential election in 2028. But I am certain we will have a free and fair Democratic primary. And it is in that free and fair Democratic primary where the new generation and the people who are sick, who are sick of this government, need to make their voices heard. Democrats in 2026 who are insufficiently committed to fighting fascism need to get got in that 2026 primary. If you take out some, you can start to change the entire party. I always tell people, and I know you do this too, Roland, the Tea Party, which is what became the MAGA party. They announced themselves to the world, not by beating a Democrat, not by beating Barack Obama, who was curb stomping them in any kind of public polling. They announced themselves to the world by beating a Republican, Eric Cantor in Northern Virginia, right? A conservative but moderate conservative, up and coming rising star in the Republican leadership. The Tea Party took his ass out in a primary in Northern Virginia. He was
shocked and stunned. He thought he was coasting, and the guy who beat him had no money.
Yeah, and they lost the seat. The Republicans, the Tea Party took him out, put a crazy Tea Party conservative up, and they got their ass blown out of that seat in the purpling Northern Virginia. But it made the entire Republican Party stand up and notice, oh, wait, we got to take these Tea Party people seriously. They've got real political power. And that is what the young, up-and-coming part of the Democratic Party needs to do in 2026. We got to take out some of these old heads, some of these establishment figures, some of these people who are insufficiently committed to fighting fascism. And even if you lose a seat in a general, taking them out in the primary is what starts to make the rest of the Democratic Party take you seriously and realize that they have to play ball with your issues and along your lines of thinking, or else they'll be the next person to lose a primary. We got to not be so concerned about electability in November and take our primaries in June and July and August incredibly seriously in 2026.
So I take it what David Hogue is doing doesn't freak you out and make you mad the way it is doing others?
No, of course not. That's what we need. And we need to let these young people lead. I've said before, like, I'm Gen X. I'm what the white people would call Gen X, right? My generation failed. My generation.
In fact, our generation is the only demographic where a majority supported Trump.
Yep. The only one. Our generation is a failure. We had an opportunity to push the rock forward. We had an opportunity to build on the Barack Obamas of the world, and we failed miserably. That means, guess what, folks? We cede our right to lead. Our failure has ceded our right to lead and must pass to the next generation, the millennials and the Gen Zers. They're the ones who have to lead now because we failed. What I can do as an old head, as a Gen Xer, right? My role is to help them, right? My role, I like this, the analogy that I've made is that, like, look, I'm a dad. I'm supposed to go to the game and bring orange slices, right? I'm not supposed to play in the game. I'm not supposed to score the goal. I'm not supposed to dunk the ball. I'm supposed to bring orange slices. I'm supposed to take the kids out for pizza after the game, right? And if they want to, while we're having pizza, if they want to ask me a question or access my knowledge, I'm happy to share. I'm happy to lend them my expertise in the ways that they think it's helpful, but I'm not the leader anymore. I'm too old. And again, statistically speaking, I've already failed. So it's got to be on them. And all I'm supposed to do is help, right? Because I've got things that they don't have. And I'm not just talking about experience. I got things they don't have, like disposable freaking income, right? Not a lot. I wish I had more. But I got a lot more than a lot of these young kids, right? I can at least spell the word mortgage, right? That they're never going to, that in Trump's economy, they're never going to get an opportunity to have, right? So I've got some experience, I've got some expertise, I've got some income. I can help them in their quest, but it's got to be their quest, and they've got to be the ones that are leading it, and we've got to be the ones that are in a support role. And that is fine with me. I'm willing to help, but there are far too many in our generation, to say nothing of the boomers, who won't get out of the way, who won't help, and won't let the kids lead. Look, the kids are going to make mistakes. They're young. That's part of growing up, right? They're going to make mistakes. They're going to say things maybe that they shouldn't have said. They're going to do things maybe in a way that won't work, but sometimes it will work. Sometimes they'll succeed. You know, why would a 30-year-old would-be candidate come asking me what I think our TikTok strategy should be, right? I don't know. I'm not digital native, right? You want to ask me how to write a print magazine article? I have some thoughts, but you want to ask me how to, like, you know, do your campaign ad on YouTube? I'm probably not the guy to ask. The kids are going to have to lead, and we are going to have to support them in their efforts. And that's how we're going to beat the guy.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All book authors this, and that is, as they were writing their book, as they were researching their book, as they were doing interviews, things along those lines. What was their wow moment? So for you, as you were putting together Bad Law? What was a wild moment? Was there something that you heard, you saw that made you even go, damn, wow, that's crazy?
Yeah, so I wrote about the Immigration and Nationalization Act and how that needs to be repealed, right? And as I'm researching how they passed this law in 1921, I came across their star scientists, the guys whose literal scientific theories were used as a justification, not just for the law, which is our fundamental alpha immigration law, but also for why the law was important and how the law should be written. And this scientist was named Harry Laughlin, which is a name that I recognized, and I couldn't figure out why I recognized the name until I did a little Google searching, and I realized that Harry Laughlin was the chief American eugenicist of that age. He was so popular and famous for his theories on eugenics that Nazi Germany imported him, emigrated him to Germany to teach the Nazis about eugenics, right? The Nazi eugenics theory was given to them by an American, specifically by this guy, Harry Laughlin. He literally got a medal in 1938 from the University of Heidelberg. Do you know how much of a bad dude you needed to be to get a medal from the University of Heidelberg in 1938, right? You're not a good guy. And this is the guy who in 1921 was key to writing our immigration laws, so that literally the congressman now talking to Dr. Laughlin and praising his work on eugenics says that the reason why we need the 1921 Immigration and Nationality Act is to stop the mongrelization of the white race by the inferior races. And
that sounds very similar to they're poisoning our blood.
Yep.
Didn't Trump say that?
It's a one-to-one, it's a linear comparison, it's a linear link, right? And so yeah, that was a wow moment for me when I look, I knew the immigration laws were racist, but that you've literally got Nazi eugenics theory laced into the American immigration system. That was wow. And after I took a shower because it was so gross to like read his science and read his theories, I was like, people should know this. People need to know where these laws come from.
Well, it's sort of like in Virginia, when Terry McAuliffe was the governor, and when he was talking about the felony disenfranchisement laws, and the story came out where a state representative or state senator literally said on the floor, "This is to keep the darkies from voting," or may have said, "This is to keep the niggers from voting." And what I tell people is, people today are defending laws, and then when people say, "Oh, those things are so old, you shouldn't bring those up," no, that's when you say, no, let's go to the root. What was the root cause of this law? What were they talking about then? And it is always important, and that's also why I tell people you can't ignore even Supreme Court dissents, because when you look at Alito today, Justice Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas does the exact same thing. They are referencing dissents as well as majority opinions from the 1800s.
Yeah,
and they are referencing people. They're referencing, frankly, white supremacists.
The thing that I do consistently in the book is that I don't ask people to take my word for it. I show them what the people who passed the laws said in real time about why they wanted the law to be passed.
There you go.
Because so often these people were honest. Actually, they told you directly they wanted to pass the law.
Yeah, because it was fine. Because then, remember at that time, it was all we everybody was clear. I don't like y'all. I'm racist. Hey, we're good. It's only today where,
right?
Don't.
And people act like these statements that they made don't matter. And all I'm trying to show people is that, well, if this is what they want, this is what they said they wanted to do. Now here's how the law that they wrote does exactly what they said they wanted it to do.
They
succeeded, right? To say that these statements don't matter, you have to imagine that these people failed, right? That these people wanted to do racism, but didn't know how to do racism in the law, and they were just too stupid to write the law the way they wanted to. Well, what if they weren't? What if they were smart? What if they accomplished their goals? And for at least these 10 laws, I try to show how these racist or misogynist or stupid people, anti-poverty people, literally accomplished the goals that they specifically set out to accomplish when they wrote the law.
Folks, the book is called Bad Law, the 10 popular laws that are ruining America. It is from the Silver Fro man himself, Elie Mystal. Elie, I appreciate it and praise the Lord. You upgraded your system because I would have cussed you out. You had them big ass headphones on, looking like you had a Sony Walkman under the table from the 1980s.
There is a part of me that still wants to do these like Radio Raheem, just like have the speaker like this. But
we now have JBL speakers that we can roll. Elie, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for your time, Roland.
All right, folks, great conversation with Elie. When we come back, I'll talk with the author of a book that details the nation's first paramedics. Yes, a group of brothers in Pittsburgh. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.